And social housing is different from affordable housing, but the other thing is the rental, I mean, to the extent that we own the land, then the mortgage might only be for building the unit, and the rent might cover the cost of construction and maintenance. It's one of those things that needs to be looked at. And it isn't just municipal, I mean, a developer that has a piece of land, would contribute could build affordable units that would either be rental or sale at lower prices. For example, there's a rental complex down here that was part of the rezoning. So there's all sorts of different ways to skin the cat. But you've got one entity that's gonna be pushing for that cat skinning. And I have 4 cats, so it's, just the same.
Just a metaphor.
Just a metaphor.
Whistler had the benefit, it was one of those communities that had the benefit of having the affordable housing fund in place prior to the creation of the housing corporation. And what they chose to do was to use that money to create rental housing, and then use the income stream from the rental housing to fund the housing corporation. So that was their, but once again, they required seed funding from that fund to get the corporation going.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any questions?
Tim, maybe it's been a while since I've heard you talk about how it works for the homeowner in terms of them acquiring the property, what portion of the property they own, and when they sell it, what happens and all that.
Well, assuming we're talking about a townhome project, which is the most typical project here, it's a strata situation. And so it operates just like a strata. They pay a price for their unit. They are a member of the strata. There's a strata council, completely independent of the housing corporation. So it's a complete handoff. There are some controls in place in terms of the resale price, and there's a number of ways of doing that. But that's what those covenants are all about, and that's why you need the housing corporation to administer that resale. But it really is completely separate. In other words, there's no sort of landlord or property management, or there's no responsibility for the ongoing management of that of those units through the housing corporation.
So, and in terms of capital gain, if X family moves into a townhouse kind of dwelling, and then they go to sell it 5 years later, and it sells for 20% more.
Well, that's what the price, the resale price control is.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of control in there that, I mean, it might sell for 20% more, 15 years down the road.
Right.
So, in that case, that 15% more goes to them. There's no shared equity. It's not a shared equity model. That's what you mean.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get clarity for the table so they understand how.
And the covenant sets a maximum increase, and I think it's to the cost of living or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the market took off, this thing would still be affordable.
Yeah, the whole
Yeah.
idea is get them in more affordably, but make sure that the person that replaces them 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road also gets in affordably. And that's the big challenge, is because everybody, when they get into, when they finally get to buy their home and it's a price they can afford, they still want it to go crazy, just like the market did, just like all their friends did. So they can, and they'll fight very hard to they forget the rules, after you get started. So that's a big part of the education and awareness challenge for the housing corporation. And that's one of the mistakes that was made in the early days in Whistler, is we just didn't work very hard at making sure people clearly understood, and signed that they understood what the deal was before they got in.
Right.
And once we got to that, once they understood that and they admitted that they understood it, then we didn't have much trouble with it after that. It was when people were buying in going, oh yeah, they say it's controlled, but I think we bust everything.
I had a question further to that. You mentioned that under that townhome scenario, the housing corporation would step out from the management of the strata. Does that mean that there would be a strata corporation formed to
Mhm.
manage that? So it would be,
Yeah.
and that would be similar to a regular strata?
Yeah, and in some cases, it may be some non-market units within a market project, in which case there would be two sections to the strata, so one strata with two different sections.
I probably have read hundreds, maybe thousands of reports in my life, and I must say, your report is one of the best. I read it on the weekend, and there's a clarity, a decency, and a not lecturing sense of reality. You have been able to present figures and the facts as is. There is, how shall I say that, there is an underlying decent humanity which is quite different than a professional delivering the report. This report is written perfectly professional, but a professional would have written it differently. There is something emanating which touches me. And it touches me because I'm born in 42 in Germany. And after the war, there were 10 years of very, very hard going. Millions of displaced Germans from the eastern provinces, they came and they needed to be housed. So affordable housing is part of my upbringing. And I think most European countries have managed to provide a very sound supply and level of affordable housing. The lack of affordable housing in most democratic, reasonably governed countries does not exist. Affordability of housing does not exist. The lack of affordable housing. And it didn't exist here when I came 30 years ago to Canada. Having a house when you get married, it was almost a birthright. It was a given. But 30 years later, it's not a given anymore. And it's not something which has become a problem for the disenfranchised, those who cannot make high income. No, now it has reached not only the middle class, no, it actually becomes an issue which even the upper middle class faces. And it doesn't really matter what class you belong to. If you have kids will eventually get married or whatever, and they need housing. And that's what hits right now. Even my kids, and they are the kids of a rich developer with all that stuff, they have huge mortgages, yes. And as a matter of fact, my son can't afford, no matter what. So the provision of affordable housing is not something which sounds good or is a fancy of a particular political orientation. No. It is as fundamental as the provision of food and sense of security and decent drinking water. It's elemental. So I haven't read any report in regard to affordable housing, and I have tried to find a few actually in all the last 5-10 years which comes to such a clarity. I'm not sure, I haven't been in Canberra, I haven't been in Bend, I know Whistler quite well, but Vancouver hasn't figured that out. And I'm not sure how many other cities or communities in North America have the benefit of this. Very few. So, am I excited? Yes. And that's not just because I'm a developer, but because I know that it can be done. I wouldn't, it sounds great, but can it be done? I can assure you it can. It's real. So I'm excited. You made my weekend.
Can we move the motion on that positive note?
It is.
Let Wolfgang move it.
Well, we have a recommendation. Where do I find that?
It's right on the very front page of the report.
Okay.
And I have just
Page 30 of your agenda package as well.
Do you want to speak to some of those things?
No, I think, they're great. The only one I wanted to question with Kathy or Ms. Lalonde was if we needed to put a word in direct staff to work with Belterra co-housing, should the rezoning be adopted, or should, upon the adoption of bylaw, blah, blah?
I would say should the rezoning be adopted.
Okay. Just because this report was written before the public hearing. And Elizabeth did raise that point at the public hearing, so we're not raising new information.
Correct.
So do you want me to read everything? Were you gonna move the motion, Tim,
I
or
was
did you
gonna
want to?
move the motion. but
Well,
you
I'll
can
move it, and
certainly
you can
move the
second
motion.
it, how's that?
We
So,
have to look- Wolfgang wants to-
No, I don't wanna risk you get tired of my accent.
so for the benefit of the videotaping, I'm gonna read the motion that I move that council receive the report from the Affordable Housing Working Group dated February 18th, 2012. The council approves the following recommendations, proceeding with the incorporation of the Bowen Island Housing Corporation, direct staff to advertise for the founding directors of the Bowen Island Housing Corporation based on the criteria and terms of reference for directors, and request the Affordable Housing Working Group to review the applications and make recommendations to council for the appointments. Include affordable housing in council's strategic plan, direct staff to work with Belterra Co-housing should the rezoning be adopted to complete the registration of covenants on the affordable housing units produced under Affordable Housing Policy 0803 and an associated administrative procedures pending completion of the incorporation of the BIHC. 5, direct staff to work with the founding directors of the BIHC to implement the following actions from the initial BIHC work plan, including A, the completion of the incorporation process for the Bowen Island Housing Corporation, including approval from the inspector of municipalities. B, the identification of a portion of the community lands in Snug Cove deemed suitable for the development of affordable housing with direction to create a development proposal in partnership with the private sector. And C, the creation of a housing reserve fund as the repository for funds received under Affordable Housing Policy 0803 when the project is too small to generate the specified non-market units. 6, approve an allocation of $7,000 for operational funding for the BIHC and the BIM 5-year financial plan and a program of $3,500 amount for 2012 based on the draft work plan proposed in the report and subject to council approval of the final work plan to be prepared by the founding directors. 7, direct staff to update the Affordable Housing Working Group webpage on the BIM website with current material to be provided by the Affordable Housing Working Group. 8, dissolve the Affordable Housing Working Group once the founding directors of the Bowen Island Housing Corporation have been appointed by council.
Any further discussion?
I'd just like to echo Wolfgang's comments on the quality of the report and congratulate this committee for the years of work. And I know affordable housing's been on the community agenda for perhaps as long as the community hall, and this passing this will be a real milestone, I think, to achieve
Sure.
it.
More staff.
Question?
I want to really acknowledge our council liaison who's just been with us through thick and thin and just always ready to support the effort, and also to acknowledge that, you know, we're the tip of a very large iceberg, and there's just a lot of people in this community who have for years and years put an incredible amount of energy and love and effort into helping their community remain true to the values that were here in the early days, and so.
I'll vote before we start.
You're gonna have a question eventually. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous.
And one other acknowledgement, going back to the Bowen Island Community Housing Association and this nice little report that started it all. And first time I ever met Tim was sitting at a meeting that Joe McIntyre had, or somebody had up at Whistler. I can't remember. We were sitting talking over lunch.